popular local theater is looking to add some more seats, both to appeal to more folks and also to bring down ticket prices. I'm Joe Shaw. Welcome to 27 Speaks, Behind the Headlines. This is our weekly podcast that looks into the week's headlines in the Southampton Press, East Hampton Press, Sag Harbor Express, the website 27east.com, and Express Magazine. I'm Joe Shaw. I'm a consulting editor with the Express News Group. And this week I'll be talking with editor-in-chief Bill Sutton, staff writers Jack Motz and Michael Wright, and features editor Michelle Trauring. So let's start with Bill Sutton, the editor-in-chief. Hey, Bill, thanks for being with us this week.
Hey, Joe, my pleasure.
So big story out of West Hampton Beach, and this was a story that actually came up from the village board meeting, but the folks from the West Hampton Beach Performing Arts Center came by the village board to give them an update, and it ended up being fairly big news.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I go to all the village board meetings in West Hampton Beach, and it's a sleepy little village unless you're going there on a Saturday night and hanging out downtown. And so I go to these meetings, and it's not often that a story necessarily comes up. So I was actually kind of really excited when I saw PAC Executive Director Julianne Penza Boone and a couple other officials from the theater, their attorney, and a couple architects come into the meeting. And it was the first time that they've talked about it publicly. So we did kind of break the story a little bit. The theater has been doing really well, Penza Boone said, especially since COVID, and I think all performing arts centers after COVID have done really well. But people have, faced kind of a little bit of a sticker shock in West Hampton Beach at the theater. Since performances are doing so well across the country, the performers that charge a fee to come into theaters, their rates have gone up and up and up over the last few years, which leaves Performing Arts Center a little stuck. They have a limited number of seats. It's a very very intimate performance space, but they have to spread that fee that they're charged from these performers out through the number of seats. So
yeah, I never really thought about that the small venue, they can get the acts in, but it raises the ticket prices for everything.
Right. And if you watch the Performing Arts Center, they came in as a community theater, but over the years, they've had some really big names there. They bring in some big names. Right now, that's been a little bit cost prohibitive. And so they've kind of switched to, their focus on, comedians and, and acts that sing other people's songs and stuff. What's the word for that? I can't think of the word.
Cover bands.
Cover bands. I'm sorry. Thank you. So they've been doing that for the last 2 years. And, she said that they would really like to get back to some bigger names. So what they want to do is they want to add 100, a little over 100 fixed seats, which I think she said was like 6 rows, to the front of the theater. They want to expand the stage, make a bigger stage, and they're going to have in front of the stage, they're going to create this standing room only area that would allow for either 154 standing room tickets, or depending on the act, because she did say people like to dance for certain acts, and I've been there to some performances, and people line the aisles and get their groove on, but it's a little uncomfortable if you're sitting there, you don't want to dance, and people are kind of so it would add room for that. Or they could bring in, depending on the type of act, 50 room for 50 people in tables and chairs, kind of like they do at the
Suffolk Theater. That was immediately what I thought of when I read
Right.
that. Was it there must be a real opportunity there to set up for tables and have refreshments and things, and that's something Suffolk Theater does a lot of.
Right, and I think people like that at Suffolk Theater. So it would depend on the type of act. They're also going to do some renovations. They're going to build a couple bathrooms on the first floor. Right now, the bathrooms are on the second floor. So if you go for a performance, you got to go up the stairs to the bathroom, and I think this was really neat too. They want to build a bar, and that a
Mhm.
lot of the theaters nowadays have a bar space. This would add revenue for the district, give people an opportunity to come in and buy some cocktails, that type of thing. It's not something that would be open to the public necessarily. It would just be during performances and stuff. But they're obviously looking to increase revenue as they lower ticket prices, so that would help a lot. And I think that's a really neat space for that. I've been to performances there, and sometimes they'll have like a meet and greet after the performance, and they have like a little rollaway cart with wine and cocktails and stuff. But this would be a more fixed location for that.
Where are they gonna put all this, Bill, on that site?
So they're going to go backwards, and they're the front of the theater is has been deemed historic, so they can't change the front of the building. They're going to go backwards, and they said that they're going to kind of close off the back of the theater, start those renovations while they're still having summer seasons, so that people wouldn't see those renovation. The architect said, people driving by wouldn't see any of the work going on until the very end when they kind of tear down that wall and build to expand. So it's going backwards. The marquee is protected as historic as well as the front of the building, and the theater received $4 million in CPF money a couple of years ago for that historic preservation. And I asked Penzabun if they were going to use any of that money for these renovations, and she said they don't think so at this time. They kind of like having that in the bank, for emergencies, that type of thing. They want it to be finished, and they're going to break ground, I think next year or in the fall, and they hope to have it all completed this fall, not next fall. They're going to break ground this fall. They hope to have it completed by July of 2028, which will coincide with the theater's 30th anniversary and would also coincide with the village's 150th anniversary.
Yeah,
So
good timing.
that'll be a good year to party in West Hampton Beach.
Sounds good. Great news coming out of West Hampton Beach. Thanks for being on that, Bill. We'll talk to you again in the future.
Sure.
Let me bring in staff writer Michael Wright. Hey, Mike.
Hello, how are you?
Getting ready for the U.S. Open, right? It's coming up quicker than we expect, and we're already going to start to see the impacts of that on traffic. What do people need to know about this?
Yeah, I mean, you'll see a little bit of impacts here and there. They had to close County Road 39 in the middle of the night, couple of nights last week, but that didn't really cause any traffic problems. And they've been doing some work on Sunrise Highway. One of the big changes this year for the Open is the USGA is going to be creating an express lane for shuttle buses that are bringing patrons and volunteers from the remote parking lot, which is up at the old Grumman plant in Calverton this year. And so in order to get those buses, because in 2018, it was taking some of the shuttle buses 2+ hours to get from Gabreski that year to the venue because of the just standard terrible traffic we have in the mornings. Once you added a little bit extra for the U.S. Open, it ground everything to a halt, and it was a real problem on the first 2 days of the tournament, which start of course are on a Thursday and a Friday when you have full-fledged just before 4th of July trade parade traffic to the Hamptons, and then you had 10, 15, 20,000 spectators trying to get to the golf course also.
So the dedicated shuttle bus lane is new this year. Then they haven't
that's
done
new.
that
So
in the past.
what they did was they created a crossover lane on the Sunrise Highway just to the east of the Hampton Bays exit, where Flanders Road meets Sunrise Highway, and so the buses are going to come down from Calverton on 24, and then they're going to get onto the highway and then take that crossover. And what they're just going to do is they're just going to block off one of the westbound lanes and make that an eastbound lane for buses and emergency vehicles only. And it'll only be from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. Then they'll pick up, they're just going to separate it with cones. The buses in the morning will be able to rush people to the venue, and then they'll pick up the cones and open up the 2 westbound lanes for the rest of the day. And so, yeah, people are, a lot of people, 2018 was a disaster, and a lot of people are very nervous about what this year is going to bring. The USGA has even noted that, they looked at traffic counts, and traffic volumes are up 10 to 15% since 2018, irrespective of the Open. And so the Open cut back the number of tickets they're selling by about 25% in some respects. And it's just, they want less people there. Now, they don't sell out those tickets anyway. So is it actually going to be 25% fewer people there? I don't know. But they are saying they want it to be a smaller attendance, partly because of the traffic impacts and having to get people there. They're pleading with people to take the Long Island Railroad as the best way to get there, which it really is, because the train pulls up right to the front of the golf course, basically.
And you just walk across the pedestrian bridge and you're on the grounds.
Yeah, exactly. And the only problem with that so far, especially for us, is that the Long Island Railroad hasn't released their schedule yet. So they're really messing with everybody. They had promised to release it by last Friday. Of course, they had the strike issue, and so now they're still doing that. I just actually spoke to one of their people this morning who says they're hoping to have it released by tomorrow. So we're eagerly awaiting how convenient that's going to be this time around. They say they're going to add trains just for the Open, both east and west. So we'll be looking forward to that, because you're not going to want to be in a car trying to get to Shinnecock. I mean, frankly, you're not going to want to be in a car trying to get past Shinnecock either, but that's just kind of going to be what it's going to be. It's 5 days. Really, it's only 2 days, that Thursday and Friday, although the tournament is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday also. You won't really have spectators, but you will have people, and you'll have those shuttle buses. And so it's going to be a scramble. I spoke to one of the USGA guys last week when we were standing around in the middle of the night waiting for them to put up the pedestrian bridge, and he said that Shinnecock isn't the worst logistical place as far as transportation, but it's up there.
I can imagine that's true. Real briefly, are there other changes on the roads that people need to be aware of for the next?
There's going to be closures, like they closed Tuckahoe Road, which is the road that actually runs right through the middle of Shinnecock Hills Golf Club. They closed that as of last night, and that'll be closed for a whole month, all the way to the end of June. That is famously the road that the Shinnecock Hills membership has been trying to get eliminated permanently for many years. Because they basically have a bumper-to-bumper traffic jam running through the middle of their golf course every afternoon, which, you have guys with golf bags walking in between cars, and people watching guys teeing off on the 10th hole from 25 feet away. And then they're putting up a stoplight at Shrubland Road today. It won't be operative until the week of the Open, but that will be a temporary stoplight that will stop, I believe, westbound traffic in the mornings when a shuttle bus needs to turn from County Road 39 onto Shrubland Road, which is how the shuttle buses will be getting to the golf course. And then there's going to be some other road closures the week of the tournament, but they're mostly residential streets right around the Open venue, and people that live there will be able to get in. So there shouldn't be too much in that regard. It's just going to be rubbernecking and some extra traffic volume for cars that are going to cause even worse than we already have traffic, which some
The
people
week of
would
the
laugh to
Open,
think that, can you go any slower than stopped?
people are going to have to make some plans for that week. It's going to be a challenge, no
Yeah, no,
question
I
about
mean,
it.
listen, a lot of people will just not come to work if they can. I know that some town officials were saying, they're already hearing from people that are going to try and just take that week off, and they were upset. But I mean, there's not really very much you can do. It's a national event with hundreds of thousands of people that are going to be attracted to it, both working and as entertainment. And
Looking forward to seeing what the changes they made in the actual course infrastructure, how that's going to change the experience for everybody who sees it on TV and everything.
yeah,
Mike
it'll
Wright,
be interesting to see that on TV because
yeah, absolutely. I think
it's
it'll
very
put it in a better light.
unrecognizable on television, and I think this year it
Absolutely.
might be more so.
I think that's true. Mike Wright, thank you. Appreciate your reporting on this. With me is Jack Motz, one of our staff writers who covers East Hampton. Hey, Jack.
Hello, Joe.
So, this is interesting. The town of East Hampton had approved a project in Montauk for a restaurant called Esty that has been slowly working its way towards opening. Ran into a bit of a snag this past week. What's going on?
So basically, as you said, this was approved by the planning board last fall. It's for a 39-seat restaurant. It's 3 floors or 2 floors and a rooftop. And basically, it was a very unusual thing that happened where they were brought back in front of the planning board because there's been 3 kind of new developments that might hint at a separate use than the one that they were approved for. And folks are kind of thinking that this is going to be a nightclub. And, if you ask the people in Montauk, they're going to say, of course it's going to be a nightclub because why wouldn't it be? Right. So people are thinking there's going to be a surf lodge on Main Street, and these 3 supporting documents kind of point that direction. So basically what we have is a private investment packet that was circulated. And then you also have 2 public documents, a building permit and a state liquor authority liquor license application that both kind of point that way, right? So you have this investment packet. It's a private document. It's kind of, shrouded in secrecy and speculation, and it's kind of hard to say what the motivations are there. But you do have these 2 completely public documents that are now being circulated around. So basically what happened was the planning department and the planning board had Marley Dominguez, who kind of runs this operation through a couple of LLCs, back in front of the planning board to talk a little bit about what is going to be going on here and whether there should be concern. And of course, there is lots of concern. So
And just to be clear, the town is perfectly happy with a restaurant, but hasn't necessarily given approval for a nightclub use.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what kind of happened is these floor plan layouts, particularly on the second floor, there's a lot of open space, right? So there's not a lot of seating, and it's kind of hard to go to a restaurant where there's not a lot of seating, right? So that's kind of what the thinking is that this is more in line with a nightclub. What Marley Dominguez would say, is that, the planning and his attorney is that the planning department and the planning board don't necessarily control the site plan, or they don't control the floor plan. They're just approving the site plans, right? So, you can submit these, these building permit applications, and then he can kind of have 39 seats and organize them how he wants to do that. So that's pretty much what's going on. And it's very interesting. It's very unusual. The planning board was asking him questions for probably about an hour, over an hour. And it kind of gets into a little bit of territory of like, where does their jurisdiction begin and end, right? Because as Rick Whalen got up and pointed out, they don't necessarily micromanage how their operations work, right? And, he also pointed out, Dominguez, that is, their revenue is going to be about $5 million every year, which seems like a lot for, a place that's definitely going to be catering towards more of a summer crowd, right? And so it's gonna be mainly operational during those months. It's a rooftop and all that. But what he kind of pointed out to the planning board is that he also owns the hotel next door. It used to be the Sands Motel. Now it's called Offshore Montauk, right? And, that was probably the argument that he put forth that was the most compelling to the planning board, right? That he wouldn't want to do anything to kind of imperil the value of this hotel that he owns, which he says is, worth a lot more than the restaurant would be.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah, so he also, when he was before the planning board, he spoke a little bit about, what his vision is for this. And he kind of said that he would base the model off of what the surf lodge was like, 20 years ago or so, many years ago. Which, you kind of have to question the wisdom of getting before the planning board and using the surf lodge as your example, right? But yeah, so that's kind of what he's saying, is he wants it to be like this sort of 50 to 75 people hangout spot where it's a little bit more relaxed, it's a little bit more chill than something like where you're packed like sardines over at some of the other clubs in town.
Interesting. These are the kind of battles that matter in East Hampton town, no question about it.
Oh,
We'll
absolutely.
see how it unfolds. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you, Joe.
So it's time for the silver linings piece that we do at the end of each of these podcasts, and we look at something that's a little bit lighter that we had in the papers this week, and I bring in features editor Michelle Trauring. Hey, Michelle. So I thought this was an amazing story, such an uplifting story about Lisa Taylor, and she bounced back from something unbelievable, and it sounded like what she went through, the timing of it was amazing. I'll let you tell the story.
I truly couldn't believe what she was saying as she was telling me. It is really an incredible story. It starts in the summer of 2019. She had just moved out to the East End with her future husband, Beau. They were about 2 weeks out from their wedding, which they had been planning for a long time in Newport, Rhode Island. She was getting to know like her new surroundings in Southampton town. She was settling back into teaching Pilates out here as a former dancer. Like her life was really, in a way, getting started. And so she goes to the eye doctor for just a routine exam, and everything seems like it's going fine. The doctor flips the light on, he sits her down, and he says, "I can see a brain tumor behind your eye." And you know, I'm in the midst of planning a wedding right now. I'm about 4 months out, and I can't imagine 2 weeks before my wedding being told that I have a brain tumor, and then within 48 hours having a craniotomy to remove this tumor. It's like unthinkable to me. So she's, rush into surgery. Beau is in Costa Rica doing his bachelor party. Her parents
Wow.
immediately started driving from where she used to live in Ohio, and she has her in-laws there with her. And so, her future in-laws take her to surgery. She's, basically by herself, with them, and, just delivered this news of everything that you knew to be, your life right now is being put on pause.
In one moment, your life just completely changes and everything. And at a moment of high drama to begin with, now you've got a whole different drama. So the good news was it was a benign tumor, but this was a fairly serious surgery, and she did suffer some complications afterwards, right?
Well, she had kind of what you would consider to be a relatively normal recovery in that, when she woke up, she didn't know the date and she didn't know where she was. But after, a few hours, some of those details started coming back. But when her parents arrived, her dad kind of helped her with memory tests, and she attributes a lot of that to what was ultimately a pretty quick recovery. But, a couple years later, during a routine MRI, she was told that the tumor was growing again. So she had a couple of options. She could either have a craniotomy every few years to remove parts of the tumor that they could. Part of the issue with this is they couldn't remove the entire thing, or she could undergo radiation proton therapy, which is a highly targeted type of radiation therapy. And so that's what she opted to do at the New York Proton Center.
And it was successful,
And it
right?
was successful. So the tumor is no longer growing. She's living with what's left of it in her brain, and they're going to keep an eye on it. But for right now, she's doing okay.
And she's back to now. She did get married, right?
She did get married. They the best part of this, arguably, other than, being healthy, is that they reclaimed their original wedding date. And instead of doing like the really big blowout that they had planned, they gathered, both of their families. They chartered a really beautiful sailboat and got married out at sea, off the coast of Rhode Island.
What a nice moment there. And she's back with Pilates, and that's also, I think that's part of the recovery for her, right?
It is. It is. Getting back to her mat was a huge part of her recovery, and she attributes a lot of that to her healing process. And later in July, she's doing a fundraiser for the New York Proton Center Foundation at Canoe Place Inn, and doing what she can to give back after this huge life-changing ordeal that really shifted her perspective on life as well.
It was such an uplifting story. It really was. I mean, in the midst of getting tragic news like that, the way she rolled with the punches and was able to bounce back was really inspiring.
It is.
Yeah, appreciate you telling that story, Michelle, as always. Master storyteller, and they're always the good ones coming from you. That's all we have for 27 Speaks Behind the Headlines. I'm Joe Shaw. We will be back next week. Thanks for joining us.